I mean, sturgeon is a little bit one of the fish I always tell everybody, if they're off the boat, guy, you can go 20 times and not even catch one of the damn things. They're just a more exclusive fish.
How you guys doing?
So this guy here is going to talk to you guys a little bit about sturgeon. I keep telling him he needs to go to Liberty Island for them things. Because I'm in there fishing for stripers, you know, with rip baits, and those sturgeons will slap it with their tail. And when I hook one, it takes me 2-3 hours to get my damn hook. I'll break it off. You know, and I've caught him at 7 foot. And nobody's fishing in there. I keep telling him, but he's scared to go in there.
Guys fish it.
Bob does, but he stays in the open. He don't go in the back where I see him all.
You don't want to get stuck.
Huh?
You don't want to get stuck.
So let's give him a hand so he can start anyway. All
right. I'm gonna just go over. We're gonna talk sturgeon. We're gonna talk about some fundamental stuff, but feel free to ask questions. This isn't gonna be a real big event. Obviously, there's people. I think there's a game on tonight. It's Thursday football, the time change, and all that good stuff. So feel free to stop me at any time. I'm just gonna ramble on. We're just gonna talk a little bit about the tides, the baits that we're using. A lot of the guys in the industry are using rods and reels, tackle. It's all pretty basic. If you look up here on this table, this is our sturgeon tackle box. It doesn't take much to go sturgeon fishing. And this, if you ever come on my boat, this is what my dash looks like. Stuff like this all over the place. So you just need to get yourself a few things. I always start with the important stuff is your hooks. We use owner hooks. I don't mix up the sizes. I don't mix up the styles. I'm going to use a 7/0 owner K hook. It's got to be a barbless hook, but these come barbed, so you have to pinch the barb down to make it legal. And all you're going to do that, here's one of my leaders. All you're going to do is take a good pair of pliers, pinch down the barb so nothing gets caught on there, okay? 7/0 hook, make sure it's sharp. Me personally, I'm pretty fortunate that I get to use new hooks almost every trip, which we do. But these hooks will hold up. You know, you can use these a few times, they'll be fine. So a 7/0 hook is the only size you need for fishing salmon roe, fishing pile worms, fishing ghost shrimp, fishing anything, any other bait you may want to use. A 7/0 hook's all you need. Okay. Gotta get yourself some leader line. I use P line on the boat. This stuff's really nice. It's soft. It's easy to tie. It's an 80-pound test. Some guys use heavier stuff. Some guys use lighter. I wouldn't use much lighter than 80-pound. I wouldn't go any heavier than 100. But 80's good. It's nice and pliable. We could tie a good knot. And I'm going to go over all that. So this is a filler spool. It's a 100-yard spool. I think these are only maybe 10, 15 bucks at most. And you get a ton of leaders. 100 yards. Leader's only 20 to 20 inches long or so. Need to get yourself some. These are bullet weights. This is a 3/8 or 5/16 ounce. You can't go more than a ½ ounce. These weights are going to go on your leader. This is for the leader. That's going to help keep your bait down on the bottom. One thing we're learning is if you remember fishing sturgeon, throughout the years, if you've been doing it a while, we used to use wire leaders, and we used to use longer leaders. Then they started making the leaders where we would put the slider on the wire leader and everything. It was still a long setup, but we've toned it all down. We figured out you don't need wire. The wire was more of a misconception that the scoots would, basically break the monofilament, which they're not. It's perfectly fine. So we just use 80-pound mono. Then we have a weight here on the leader. And then our leaders are pretty self-explanatory. We're going to tie a knot here, but this isn't going to be a regular knot. This is going to be a row knot. Okay, this is something you would tie for salmon, steelhead, or you can use just called a snail knot. I use a row knot because this is all I know. I don't know how to tie a real snail, so I've been tying this knot forever, and it works well. The reason why we like these hooks along with this type of knot is because it's going to pull down on the tip. So if you got a hard, like a regular Palomar knot here to this eye, and you go to hook that sturgeon, what's going to happen? The knot is going to rotate. You're going to hit a hard spot in that sturgeon's mouth, and you're going to be pulling. Well, if the knot's tied directly to the eye, the knot's going to bend down. You're not pulling anything. You're just pulling the hook away. So with this pulling a straight eye and snail, when you do get that bite, see how it's pulling down? It's pulling the tip down into the fish. So we very rarely lose fish on these hooks. The other styles, like an octopus hook, the ones that you could buy already barbless, they're not ideal for sturgeon fishing, in my opinion, for the way we fish here. You do go up in Oregon, Washington, they're going to use a octopus hook. For whatever reason, every time I see them put one out, even guys in the industry, they complain about losing fish. And this is going to be a hook that you're going to see on most all the boats. It's a 7/0 owner, and all the guys are going to snail them, and that's because of what I told you. If that's tied directly and you go to hook that fish, all that's going to happen is your knot's going to rotate. You're not going to drive that hook into the hard mouth of the sturgeon. All right? Any questions here about the leader? So I'm going to pass this around. Feel free to check it out. It's a live hook. And what I got here on the end of it, it's a bait button. Since it's a barbless fishery, it's not a barbless area, it's a barbless fishery. So we got to find a way to keep the bait on the hook. You could use these bait buttons. They're a big game bait button. It's what I use. Or if you're feeling like you don't care about your bait, you just put it on and just cast it out. But these things are cheap, and you can reuse the plastic, the rubber disc. And then you got to get yourself some good swivels. There's a lot of different brands out there. I wouldn't use an Eagle Claw. I wouldn't use anything of not a real name brand. You want some with the line rating. So this particular swivel is a size 5. It's rated for 125 pounds. You want something that can handle a big fish. Just last week we caught a fish that is pushing 300 pounds. And there's bigger fish than that, but even a 50, 60 pounder, you're putting a lot of pressure on. And I'm going to show you why we're putting so much pressure on is because with the barbless hook, if you don't have a lot of pressure on that fish and the fish goes to make a run to you, you're going to lose them. I've had days where the guys aren't fighting the fish. When I tell everyone on the boat, and that's why we're using high quality 120 pound swivel, this thing's going to take 120 pounds to break. You're not going to hold on to that, right? So this ain't going to fail. And you don't want to use that as a weak link. So what I tell everyone on the boat is when we're fighting the fish, if I tell you you're not reeling fast, I want you to pull on that fish. I want you to pull back, because the harder you pull back, it's going to get that fish really angry. It's going to have that fish pull back. You want the rod and the reel to do the work, right? You don't want to have a soft drag. We're going to go over all that. So get yourself some good quality swivels. These are owners. This is what we're using on the boat, but it's just a rated swivel, pound rating. Get yourself an assortment of weights, okay? Weights are going to come in different sizes, shapes, whatever you want. The only ones I would stay away from are the flat river sinkers, the ones that are flat with beveled in the center. I'd stay away from those. They're going to want to do this a lot in the current. I like either using a torpedo or a pyramid style, okay? Now, some of the pyramids are going to have 2 eyes. You can find them at some shops. You're going to have an eye on top and an eye on the bottom. There's an advantage to each. By putting your slider on here, I'm going to show you how to rig all this stuff up, but if you put it on this particular end, you go to cast out, it's going to hold in there pretty good. But what's going to happen is when your boat's swinging, your rods are going to really load up, and you're going to get this, and you won't get the slap water bites, okay, when the boat starts moving. Now, if you can find some either torpedo or a pyramid style like this with an eye on the opposite side, is when that boat starts to turn, the weight's dragging across the bottom, right? So your bait is still fishing. So like today we hooked a fish, the lines were moving a little bit, but they weren't really doing nothing, just real erratic. They were just kind of dragging like we're drifting, how they would stop, But the problem is going this way, the rods are going to load up, and it's going to break free, and it's going to do this. If you can find a way to be able to drag the weights, right? But not a round weight. I'd stay away from round weights too. Either torpedo or a double-eyed pyramid. And this way, when you go to move, the boat's moving, your baits will stay in the zone, and will continue to hit it. So that seems to help out. So you don't want to have at 8 ounce if you prefer, but the lightest weights we use on my boat's going to be a 10 ounce, 12s, 14, 16 ounces, and even 20 ounces. 22 ounce weights sometimes in the heavy current. We fish a lot of rods on the boat, so we can't put all the rods with the same ounce weight, or else we have a tangle. So we put, like say for instance, say if I'm fishing 8 to 10 rods, my forward rods are going to have heavier weights, and we'll go lighter as we go back. Because this way, when we do cast off to the side, a lot of our casting isn't directly behind the boat. That's how I was traditionally taught. But back then, we were only allowed to use one rod per person. Now we're able to use multiple rods per person. So if you come out and trip with us, we're going to fish anywhere from 8 to 10 rods. That's going to be about average. The more rods, the more bait, the more fish, right? Great idea. It works. Imagine Martinez doing it. Yeah. So various size weights. Another tool you guys are going to need is some miracle thread. If you don't want to use the bait buttons, you're going to use this to tie your stuff on. We are going to use this for our salmon roe. That's going to go in the spawn netting. Okay, the spawn netting by Atlas Mikes. It comes in a roll. They also have it in pre-cut squares. The same size is 4 inches, but they also have pre-cut squares 4 inches by 4 inches. This is a great way to make your bait. Your baits now are not going to be to break the pocketbook. Okay, we're using baits literally the size of a quarter. We figured out that this is the greatest thing I ever heard from a buddy of mine. Elephants eat peanuts, right? Makes sense? Why are you going to have this big old clump of bait out there when it's not natural for one, and that's just not how they're feeding? So we're making baits like our salmon roe balls are literally this big, maybe even smaller, okay? If you're going to use a ghost shrimp, you're going to take a ghost shrimp and you're going to thread it on that hook. One ghost shrimp is all you need. The sturgeon's not going down there. Oh, there's a big old clump of ghost shrimp. We're putting it all in our mouth. It doesn't work like that. It's not natural, right? We're figuring something out here that we could pump. The less bait we fish, the more aggressive bite we get out of the sturgeon too. And you let him eat it, and he's not going to let go of that bait. And like today, I had to slap the guy on the hand a few times because he wanted to get to the rod right away. As soon as the rod starts to bite, I was like, let him get aggressive with it. Then we'll hook him, because at that point he's getting comfortable with the bait. Then we'll get a good hook in him. So we got that, bait buttons. Last but not least, get yourself some scent. I'm becoming a firm believer in scent. Sometimes we use it, sometimes we don't. I can tell you this, that there's days that it's going to get me more bites. There's a lot of brands out there, Procure. I use a lot of Atlas Mikes on my stuff. They have a glow scent, they have gels, they have oils, they have all kinds of good stuff. My favorite scent that I like to use, and I have a handful, I use some anise. We use a lot of, Mike's here makes a sturgeon oil. It's really good. It's pretty much, I wouldn't say odorless, but it's not real strong, but it's real fishy. How do I know that? Because I put it in my mouth before. This is really intense. But sturgeon are drawn. Just because we can't smell it doesn't mean they can't. It's a proven scent that I've been using a lot as of lately is the sturgeon scent by Mike's. And they have a salmon egg oil, which works well. And they also have a sand shrimp oil, which is what I've been using a lot of too, because a lot of guys like myself, we get salmon roe throughout the year, and it's a cheap bait for us because it doesn't cost us anything, right? But it's a very productive bait. Right now, the guys using ghost shrimp are catching a lot of fish, so I'm taking the ghost shrimp, sand shrimp oil and putting it on my roe, and it's getting bites along with just a natural roe flavor. The reason why salmon roe works so well, those salmon are in the system, they're dropping eggs all over the place right now, they're picking them up. And salmon roe is a very productive bait. Lamprey eel. Today we hooked fish on lamprey eel. I'm going to pick me up some sand shrimp tomorrow, ghost shrimp, just to throw it in the mix. You guys are getting a lot of fish on that. Any questions so far?
Time of year doesn't matter for you for bait. It's not like
time of year for bait. I would say it does. Right now, water's green, meaning there's no fresh water coming down, so it's salty. The salinity level's up. That's why the shrimp's working. The roe's going to work just because it's the time of year when we have salmon in our system. But roe's a bait you could use year-round. It's almost like a treat when it's not around the salmon season. They see it, oh, we got to eat it. When we get high water like we had the last handful of years, we are going to use like worms, pile worms, a lot of lamprey eel. There's something about when that water's flushing down the river, the roe will stop fishing a little bit, and then you use other baits like the worms or even something that's going to be a little bit more attractive, a lot of eel. And, you know, the wintertime bite, I catch a lot of fish on eel.
Do they respond to imitation roe?
No, because they're not really seeing it, right? So they're smelling, you know. So there is something to be said about the real thing as opposed to something that's not real. But I'm sure you can buy some of the pre-cured stuff and probably catch a fish on it.
Treated roe versus fresh roe?
Treated versus fresh. All our stuff right now, I would say it's 50-50, Steve. But as of late, the cured roe, now the water temp's dropping, is fishing better. So the warmer the water, the raw eggs will fish fine. The temp's down to 56 degrees now. So what happens with the raw eggs, it's not going to milk out, it's not going to break down. So in order to get the eggs to fish, you got to treat it. So with either, you know, some sugar. This is no secret. Guys are putting sugar on their roe. They're putting a little bit of salt. You can put some MSG on it. All MSG is a flavor enhancer, right? And it's just going to pull out more of the stuff. There's no secrets there. This stuff's been going around for 2 decades, right? So brown sugar, white sugar, some salt if you want. Now, I would stay away from the more salt. Use less salt. More sugar won't hurt you. All it's going to do is going to allow the eggs to fish a little better when the water temp cools off. And what I like to do, all my eggs for the most part, if you guys fish the river for salmon and you want to mess with some cures for sturgeon, they say use some sugar and use a little bit of salt, very little, and you're going to cure the eggs up. And what I like to do, I cut them, take the skein and just cut them up in small pieces. Or what I've been doing a lot of lately is taking the fresh roe that I get without freezing it, and then you take a spoon, a plastic spoon, a big spoon. You could take that on the back side. So a salmon roe skein is open on one side and it's got membrane around. So you put the open side down and you can push the eggs off the membrane. So you get these individual eggs, salmon eggs, right? Push it off and they're easier to store that way and they're easier to cure that way. All my eggs are stored and cured in mason jars in my freezer. So I already have a pretty productive cure. We all do that, you know, do this. And so I stack them up. I have a warm water and I have a colder water, you know, section and a mark. I just grab the jar out. It's a pound of eggs, and that's all I go fishing with for the day. All right. So mason jars, vacuum seal them. You can. If you're going to vacuum seal your eggs, a way to do it is to open up your vacuum seal bag, get a size determined, throw your eggs in there. Throw it in the freezer for a day. All right? Don't vacuum seal it. Let them freeze all the way. Bring it out the next day, throw in the vacuum sealer, air's out, you're good. The reason why you don't want to do it while it's still fresh, you're going to pop the eggs. And then when you go to thaw them out, if you're using a vacuum seal bag, always cut the bag open, let the air get to it. I pull it out of the bag if I'm going to vacuum seal. Like sometimes I'll get too much eggs and I don't want to deal with them, and I'll just freeze a big old block like that. But when I thaw them out, you want to slow thaw them. You don't want to put them in water. You don't want to do anything like that. So you open up the bag, put it, wrap it in some paper towels, put it in a big Tupperware, and it'll thaw out over a couple of days in the fridge. Works best. That way, because if you speed up the process, the eggs are going to turn to mush. You know, because the reason why that happens, I'm sure we've had an issue with that. Maybe there's water crystals around the egg, so if you fast thaw them, thaw them out, they're just going to break and burst your egg and get a mess. All right. So, any questions about scents, baits, anything so far? Yeah, you have a question?
No.
Okay. All right. Yep.
How do you actually do that?
So this is a netting. You roll it out. Yeah. No, it's a spawn netting. So you roll it out, and then you put your bait inside, and then you kind of just wrap it.
Like a
little ball. Yep. Exactly. And this stuff comes in various colors. I got 3 or 4 different colors on the boat. That's because if I'm using different scents or different cures, and I got them all out on the spread, and we start moving rods around, most of the time when we land the fish with that it's still on the hook, I can tell which fish, what it bit, and what flavor it was, or whatever. And this way it determines what I'm going to put out more of. Like today, I was playing around with a couple things. They were favoring one flavor. Yeah, that's what they wanted. They wanted one specific. I got bit on the other stuff, but they wanted the sturgeon oil. All right, and now I know tomorrow I'm gonna do a majority of that. I know that because they change. every week's different, salinity, everything's different. Now, you can't go wrong with just raw bait. You can't do anything wrong with that, but you want to spice it up and increase your bites, you're going to use some scent.
Jay,
Yeah.
don't laugh at this one, but does the captain typically give this to you bring your own bait?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
You know where I'm
Let us use our stuff. That's just easier because we know this way you can bring your own stuff, but don't blame us if you don't get bit. You know, that's another question. You know, yeah, most guys don't, but have I had guys bring stuff and we got bit on it? Yeah. Why not? Sure. It's just when we're salmon fishing the ocean, this guy's got his lucky apex he has to put out there as, oh man, here we go. But it happens. I don't see why not. But sometimes they don't want it messing with the spread either. So if you have something that the fish don't want, it's not going to do much for you. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the tackle, rods and reels. Now, technology's come a long ways. I mean, we're using small reels, small rods that are going to carry a big punch. These rods are all designed for saltwater fishing. Me personally, you could use level line reels, right? They have the level line. I try to avoid them just because I'm fishing a lot of days, and that's just one less moving part that I have to deal with. You don't do as much fishing as I do, which a lot of you probably aren't. You could use any reel you want, okay? But I try to stay away from the level line just because, like I say, less moving parts, the longer my reels are going to last for my clients. As for brands, there's all kinds of brands out there. You're going to pick whatever suits you, fits your price point. This is an Avid reel. I use a lot of Kumas on the boat as well. I would stick with something with a power handle. You want something that you can hold on to. It's going to help with two things, fighting the fish, and then also our technique that we pretty much mastered here in the last few years, the last 3 years, or maybe a little longer, is the reel down technique to hook the fish. So we used to set the hook. We don't do that anymore now. Now everything is just reeling in the rod holder when we get a bite. And a good handle is something nice to hold on to when you do get that bite. So I would stay with the bigger size reel, a reel that's going to hold about 250 yards to 300 yards of line. Clickers aren't important, but they help. Lever drag versus star drag, doesn't matter, whatever fits your boat. You just want a reel with a decent drag. Our drags are going to be relatively firm when we're fighting these fish, like I was talking to you about. If you have a loose drag and you go to reel on that fish and that rod isn't loaded up and you got them on, what's going to happen is those fish are so quick for being a big fish, they're actually pretty fast. So if you have a loose drag and you're reeling and you have a loose drag, you can't gain the line. So if you have a firmer drag, every time you turn that handle, you're gaining line. That's what you want. Then again, these aren't winches either. So I have to tell people this all the time on the boat. Guy gets a fish on, we're fighting it, and he's just doing this. You know, well, that ain't gonna do much. This isn't a wrench, this is a reel. So then, you know, you get the right fish on, you get the reel down on it, lift up, reel down, to fight the fish up to the surface. But a good reel is gonna allow you to pick up line a lot of the times. And so I would stay away from the higher gear ratio reels, like the reels that are in the 7s or 8s. That's a little fast. 5.3 to 1, maybe the low 6s, 6.3 to 1, 6.4 to 1. But anything higher than that, I think it's too much, it's too fast. Because when you go to fight that fish, you're not going to be able to turn that handle, right? You're just going to, it's just overworking the gears in there. So I'd say in the mid 5s or low 6s is what you want for gear ratio. I use 65-pound braid. As for, you know, color, I don't think it really matters. I know it doesn't matter because the fish don't see it. All right, I use all white colored line on the boat just because we can see it at all light applications for the most part. The dark line, like your standard Power Pro green, dark green, it's hard to see when you get 5-6 lines off the back of the boat. So we use light stuff. I know guys that use orange, yellow, whatever, want just high vis colors. I like white. It's just something that's always treated me well. And you don't have to worry about it fading. A lot of the green colors are going to fade on you. So as for brands of line, I use Tough Line. They're all good. It's just whatever's going to fit what you're looking for. Power Pro, P Line, Tough Line, Extreme Braids, a local company. They got good stuff. But 65-pound test, I wouldn't go any lighter than 65. 50-pound is, so with this being a zero stretch line, and you got virtually somewhat of a tight drag, and not a real soft rod. I would say your rods aren't going to be really soft. Okay, you want a rod that's going to have a decent tip, but you want it to load up. The days of the ultimate sturgeon rod, I remember growing up as a kid, it was a real soft rod, little backbone, which was fine. All right, we caught fish on it. You want to stay away from the all glass rods. The problem with the glass rod, it's going to be parabolical bending. So when you go to set the hook on that fish, the rod's going to load up. You're not going to drive that hook into the fish. You want a faster action rod, so that way when you do get that bite, when you reel down, the rod's going to load up and it's going to hook that fish. All right. If you have too soft a rod, you're going to miss a lot of fish. We don't use monofilament anymore. Just for that reason, is because of the stretch. We don't want any stretch. Braid, I remember when braid first came out, we grew up fishing mono. I'm sure a lot of you guys were like that. And we had to learn how to fish it for each application. So now I use mono or braid for almost everything I fish for. We've learned how to fish it, even for the light mouth, or the light hooks and the halibut's mouth. Everything, we learned how to adjust our application. In this case for sturgeon, you have a tight drag, zero stretch is going to be in your favor, big time. Rod, 7.5 to 8.5 foot rods. This one's I think a 7'8" Phoenix. We use Phoenix rods on the boat. This one's rated, I believe, for this one's a 25 to 50. So it's a heavier rod. When you get a fish on this, it may seem really stiff, but when you get that fish on, you can feel it. It does its job and it loads up. And you'll, fight your fish. Any questions here about the rod and reel? No? All good? All right. Now, we went over all that stuff. Now we got to figure out where we're going to go fishing. And that's the hardest part in my day is where do I go? Every day is different. Just as of late, we've been fishing at the Carquinez Bridge and in the Straits. It's been really good, the mothball fleet, what's left of it. What we're having an issue with this year is there's no flow coming out of the rivers, and we have a big old saltwater line that's moving around. And so the fish, the sturgeon doesn't mind salt water. They'll live in salt water. There's a happy medium. They want to be right on that brackish water line. And lately, it's been staying ahead of the game and knowing how to read the tides and staying on that brackish water line. It's just a comfort zone for them. I can see, I know things are changing because I'm working on my third week down there fishing this season. And when I started, it's funny, you have the same tides every 2 weeks. And how do I know that? I got a tide book, right? This is a tide log. This is my tide book that I do everything with. I got them on my boat. I got them in my truck. I got them everywhere. So this one is actually for Sassoon Bay and the Delta. There's no adding or subtracting here, all right? Now they make one for the Northern California, which is going to be for San Francisco Bay and stuff like that. This particular book is going to be for fishing the Delta and Sassoon Bay for where we're sturgeon fishing, right? What I like about this tide book, it gives you a couple things. It's all visual. You can see how big the tides are. But the tides aren't my biggest worry. It's more the current. So the current, so when we're out there fishing, oh, the tide's not right. No, it's not the tide, because tide's what goes up and down. It's the current speed. Okay, and the current in all our types of fishing is the most important. It isn't the tide, but the tide is going to tell you what the current's doing a lot of times. But when we're talking lingo, we're talking current. The current's not right yet. Be patient. It'll happen. So when we're picking our spots, and based on the time of year, so traditionally, this is November. We shouldn't be fishing Martinez or the mothball fleet or that area. The problem is, up in the Pittsburgh area, we should be fishing Pittsburgh, Chain Island, Broad Slough, that whole zone. There's so many weeds up there that we can't even fish. But we know the volume's up there. So that's why the scores, you watch all the guys in the industry, guys, we're all catching fish. You know, some days we'll catch a lot, some days we'll catch less. It's because we're not fishing on the volume of fish that we need to be fishing on. The volume of fish, we know where it's at. We all know where it's at. We can't fish it effectively. If you want to put your time in and maybe get some bites, cool. Yeah, you're doing grass. But right now we're having to move around a lot. We're fishing, you know, basically we're trying to catch, you know, 1 or 2 cows in the big herds over there, but they're off on their own grazing. So that's why the scores are kind of all over the board right now, is because we're not fishing on the big volume. Right now we should be up in the deep water. We should be hooking 10 to 20 fish a day easily. We've done that, you know, here recently, but it's not like that every day because we're not on the volume. So hopefully, and the reason why they grass, I was just talking to Alan about this. They've been, you know, putting all kinds of weird stuff in the delta to kill the plants and stuff in the growth. And it's just all over the bottom. It's littered, and it'll go from top of the water column all the way to the bottom. It's bad. And I'm talking, you cast out, and you can see it come through on your fish finder. If you have any decent fish finder, your fish finder will clutter up. You'll see the grass come, and your rod just go like this. Awesome, that's cool. Then we just move. I'm not going to deal with that. Waste of bait, waste of cast, waste of time. So we're having to move around, and lately we're having to, like I say, stay in that. But the sturgeon are in that. The group of fish that we're on is in that line, and overall the clean water is going to be the Sassoon Bay area. Okay, down the ships, the Montball Fleet, the bridge, that whole zone is clean. You go up in the big cut, it's where we fished the last 2 days. There's fish in there, but there's grass. Middle Ground Island, which is, we've been catching Middle Ground, Honker Bay, Little Cut. The grass is there, but it's moving around. You can get around it. Now, if you go any higher than that, good luck. But like I say, hopefully we're getting, what I'm kind of worried about, I'm relying on other people's intel. So could they be lying to me and telling me that's dirty and it's clean? Could be. Hopefully not, but everyone's been fishing lower, and it's because of that. And that's where we know we need to fish right now, but we can't. So we're having to adjust, which is fine. That's why we go fishing, right? That's why I pay Alan to show us how to use these little ranch units and stuff, and you know, find the fish. Because just because you're not on the big volume doesn't mean you're not going to have a good day. Anything can happen. All right. So the tides, knowing where to go. So deeper water. If you want to fish deeper water, you want to fish slower moving tides. So say for this is March 30th. This is a real good deeper water spot. I would say in March, say I'm going in the future here, we're going to be fishing the ships area where we're fishing now, the bridge. But this is about as big a tide as I'd want to use. It's about a 4 or 4.5 footer for that 40 foot of water, 44, 35, you know, foot of water. That's about as big as the current I want to fish a whole day in. 4 foot or so of current change. Any bigger than that, I'm not going to be able to stay there that long. I'm going to have to pick the window. And ideally, you guys know when a sturgeon feeds the most? Beginning and end of the current. Whatever it is, you know, it's something about for my first fish in the morning of the day, you keep her first push of incoming. Boat wasn't even straight yet. We get a nice 50-incher. And ideal, because the reason being is because they don't have to fight the current. So what the current does help you, it does help disperse the scent trail. So I kind of caught that fish, not luck, but I marked them obviously, or marked a few fish. That's why I set the boat there. So I happened to put a bait in front of them, and we got just enough current. He found it, and we got him. But then the boat's, swung around the current. We got a little more current, and then what that happens, it's going to move your scent. Your natural scent or whatever scent you're using, and it's going to create a scent trail. So picture this path here. So the sturgeon's going to come down with the current, not swimming like this. They're not going to swim down current and then turn around. So they're facing the current like this, and they're walking backwards. Okay? And picture this is our boat up here. We're casting back here. So whenever I'm looking for fish in an area, I want to make sure I mark fish off the side of the boat and then our length. So if you've ever been with me on my boat, I drive around a lot. You know, I'm on an 9 hour day, and just like everyone else. You know, some guys fish longer, but they're not full-time guys like me. I'd get divorced if I had to fish any later than that. So I've learned how to get it done in a period, a time frame. But what you got to do is find the fish. So I got a map only on my boat. It's a GPS only. And I use that a lot. So I'm driving around. I'm using these little contours. You ever look at your GPS map? There's like little wiggly lines. Those are contours. I'm finding what contour the fish are favoring, and that's where we're going to anchor up. So say, for instance, we're looking here. I'll come up this side, and I'll mark fish over here. And how I know I mark fish, I mark it on my fish finder, but then I mark it on my GPS. I'll hit a waypoint, hit a waypoint, hit a waypoint. I'll get a little group of fish, and I'll anchor right in the middle of those things. And then they'll come to us. Or what I like to do, I'm pretty aggressive. Some guys like to sit and wait. An average day for me is 3 moves, maybe 5. You know, I'll move. I usually give my baits 30 minutes. 30 minutes, I'll change them out. That'll be 3 rounds of baits, an hour and a half. If I don't get a fish in that first 30 minutes or first hour and a half, I'm moving on. Something ain't right. Maybe the current's not right, or maybe I'm just not anchored on it. And the fish are coming to my spread, so I'll move. I don't know how many times that, you know, I'll blank, you know, 2 spots, and all of a sudden your 3rd spot you catch 2 or 3 keepers. You know, like today, we started off on one. I made another move, didn't do nothing. I had fish underneath me. I made a move at the next spot. We hooked 4 fish pretty quick. You know, it's just how we put it on them. So I'd say right now the fish are actively biting. I would be aggressive. 2 moves, very minimum. 3 to 5 moves, probably. You know, if you need to do that much. Hopefully, you just get it done on one-stop shop or in them, but it's not always like that. Wintertime, water cools off. Fish metabolism slows down. They're not going to eat as often. I move less because I know they're there. They're just not wanting to bite. So now I got to wait them out. Right now, water is warm. I know they're actively feeding. I'm going to try to find the feeding fish. And a lot of
what temperature in water
is ideal.
Would you start slowing down?
Oh, I'd say you got 52-ish, 51. I think right now we're in the prime zone. It's 56. Like the 62, 63 is still a little warm. You'll catch them pretty good, but it seems like from now, you know, from 60 to mid 50s is ideal. Once it gets below 50, good luck. They really slow down. So picture this: they go into hibernation, and that's why I usually shut up shop in the middle of the winter, December-ish, unless we get a nice warm winter. 3 years ago, we had a warm winter. And we were down in San Pablo Bay in January just having a heyday down there. It was the best fishing I not ever seen, but it was pretty good fishing. But we had a lot of rain, but it was warm, you know. But traditionally, the water's clear and we don't get any rain. So if we do get a cold snap with the clear water, it's going to get cold. It's going to stay cold. Now, if you add some color to the water, and which is what you want, you get some wind, you get a little rain, you get some nice days, the water's going to warm up and the fish are going to be more active. Just ideally we want some rain, but below 50 you got to slow down. You'll catch them in 46, 44 degree water. I've done it, but it gets pretty slow. They have to eat though. So it'll be very